then I stepped back a little bit and continued breathing, and I started to become mankind instead of me. It was a black man, a Chinese man, a brown man, a Native American man, albinos of the different races, and all men. And no matter what I saw, there was this sense of kinship, like the family of man, that these are all my brothers in some way, and then that also were gone throughout time. So that it was a Neanderthal, a Cro-Magnon, you know, whether cavemen or tribal peoples or different things from different points in history. And then I turned, feeling like all of this was coming together, and there was this feeling of compassion and love and kindness and caring. And I realized at that moment that my life would be devoted to helping people with psychedelics, and that that's what I wanted to do. And that there was nothing else left to do than to try to help people to have this feeling that was happening in this moment for me. And then I turned and I walked out of the door, and my girlfriend walked down. It was like a long hallway, and she walked down the hallway coming toward the bathroom. And I didn't know whether I'd been there for an hour or 4 hours or 5 hours. You know, time was nothing. And I'm looking down this hallway, and the hallway was carved, erotic carvings all over the hallway. And when I went to India with Stan many years later, and we went to the temples at Khajuraho, I actually walked into the temple that this was transformed into, this hallway. And I'm looking at all of this, and there were like flickering lamps that were illuminating it, and as the lamps would flutter, then the figures looked like they were actually having intercourse, and it was everything. I mean, all varieties of intercourse, and males and females and males and males and females and females and animals and everything, you know, going on. And I'm just, whoa. And then I look at my girlfriend, and now she looks back at me, and I realize that the first language was a gestural language. And so I began speaking with her, and it was all gestures and no words, because when we tried to speak in words, there was such an echo you couldn't understand. So it was these very, very tender, slight motions that meant something that was going into this conversation. And then as I looked at her, she became all women, and beautiful and ugly, and all races, and intelligent and not intelligent, and every possibility. And then I came up against this like training that I had had as a young man, because I'm half Latin American, and I was very much trained that as a young Latin American man I should bed down many, many women. I should have sex with many women, and then no one woman should be enough for me. And but here we're all women right there in one person. So I asked her to marry me, and then having asked her to marry me, we went off to the bedroom together, and it was like male and female of every animal, of every creature across time and space and through the universe making love to each other. And it was just the most amazing experience I'd ever had in my life. Nothing like I knew sex to be in my existence as a normal ego. And then I had a moment when something suddenly shifted, and it seemed like time froze for a moment. And it was as if the intensity of all of this experience diminished significantly, and it was as if my usual sense of myself, my ego, was trying to come back, and when it came back, it stopped time. So I looked at the second hand on my watch, and it was stopped. It wasn't moving, and there was a sense of a little bit of panic, like, uh-oh. And then I kind of, in order to make something happen, I kind of got out of the bed, you know, stood up, and went over to the closet and opened the closet. And then in that moment, when I looked at all of her dresses in the closet, I became a woman. And it was like, it's just ridiculous. It was like, well, what shall I wear today? And how shall I look today? And something that made no sense to me, like how it could take a woman time to get dressed, you know, it was like it perfectly sensible. I mean, oh no, maybe I'll wear, no, not that one. And then I kind of came out of that and came back into a more normal masculine identity, and I turned around and I went back to the bed and I lay down next to my beloved, and I put my hand on her breast, and I felt this lump in her breast. And within the space of seconds, I started living the loss of a mate, because the question in our lovemaking and everything was, have we always been together? Will we always be together from the dawn of time to the end of creation? And suddenly what came in was, there's death, there's suffering, there's time, you know, and your time could run out. And then it was like, oh my God, all that holds you back from being creative, all that holds you back from giving life everything you've got to give, from being all you can be, has been released. Now you should be able to cure, because it was clear that she had cancer. It was so difficult. It was like, oh my God, how am I going to save her? I have to save her. What am I going to do? And I'm going to be so alone, and and then it would alternate between time stopping. And I finally had this feeling, I have to leave this space. If I can get out of this space, it will be better. And so I went out and I talked to my friends that were there, and I said, I mean, hours have gone by in clock time, probably 6 hours. And I say to my friends, can you watch her? You know, she'll be okay if I go? And then I left and I got into my car, which was this little sports car with a very big engine, a big V8 engine, and I got into the car, and of course, what does a good boy want to do when he's going through all of this? I was going to go home and tell my mother. So I get into the car and I start the engine, and I go, vroom, vroom, and the moment I start the engine, it's like, vroom, vroom. I had this direct connection to my genitals, to the engine. Every time I revved the engine up, it was like almost a little erection, and just, oh, whoa, whoa. And it was like this direct connection to my hormonally driven life as a 17-year-old guy, you know. Oh, wow. You know, the car was a symbol. It wasn't just a symbol of virility. It was connected to virility. And so I put it in gear and I start moving, and then immediately I realize the state of mind that you're in, it could be extremely dangerous to be driving a car. So then it was like a little prayer, you know. How fast is the engine going? What does the speed limit sign say? That the speed doesn't go faster than that. Make sure you're in the right gear. Make sure that you're in the right lane. It seemed like it took 4 or 5 hours to get home, but I finally made it to my mom's house where I was living, and I walked in the door, and I said to her that I had just had the most amazing experience of my life, and that I had taken a drug called LSD. And she's, the first words out of her mind were, "Richard, your beautiful mind, oh no." And I said, "Oh, Mom, no. If anything, I'm better than I was before. It's made me more caring and more sensitive and smarter, and, it's not like that." And it's the most incredible experience I've ever had in my life, and I'm starting to forget it already. And then she ran into her bedroom and she came back. She was she knew how to take shorthand, so she had a stenographer's pad, and she said, "Okay, you tell me and I'll write it down and I'll take notes for you." And then, of course, when I told her about my girlfriend being sick, she was concerned because she worked in medicine. She said, "Oh my gosh, could there be an impurity in what you took? Could there be something in the food that you ate? What's going on?" So I called, and my girlfriend was fine and everything was okay. And then it was just, I realized it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that I had taken this about 8 or 9 o'clock the previous night, and I'd been up all this time. And so I went into my room and I lay down, and it was like all of these transcendental insights, all of this amazing love and compassion and connection and intuitive awareness of how to help people to live better, how to help myself, was slowly going away. And what was coming back was this, kind of adolescent boy who was worried about what he was going to do with his life, and all of these questions began to come back, and so then in a moment it was as if nothing had happened at all. But what had happened was so startling and so wonderful and so meaningful, and I thought, surely there must be people in the world somewhere that understand what I've been through, and I have to find them, and I have to get their help, and I have to do this work in this area. And then, like a heart beating, the funny things that are usual about life and the environment started to come back. And part of it was like, oh, my old identity, it's just this little thing, and it's hardly an adequate place to hold this enormous consciousness, but it's kind of where I live and who I have to be, and kind of getting back into it. And then there was also an aspect where that was comfortable. It was like listening to a heartbeat. It's this repetition that was comforting and soothing somehow, and I went to sleep.